be with you tonight and to be able to share a message from God's Word. It's always a thrill to be here at Ashville Road for a lot of different reasons, and I've mentioned some of those in years gone by. I have loved and admired this church for most of my preaching life. I first became acquainted with you good folks 30 years ago when I was preaching over in East Walker County, and so have been aware of you and associated with you off and on all during that time. It's also a joy to be able to reacquaint with some other folks that I have known sometimes in different places, and now worshiping with you here, and I know that they're blessing you and you are blessing them, and I'm grateful for that as well. Ordinarily, I get to associate with my good friend Drew Kaiser. I love Drew and have grown to appreciate him and respect him in so many ways. And I think it might tell me something. If I've been here every year, Drew's finally figured me out. So he schedules me on a night when he could be somewhere else. No, he didn't do that. He left me a real nice message this morning, and I hate that he's not here, but I know that he is blessing the folks over in Boaz tonight, and he's going to be on our series a little bit later this year. Ours runs later than everybody else's. We start in July and run through September, and so Drew will be with us a little bit later, and our folks always enjoy having Drew. They consider him one of theirs, and he always does an outstanding job when he is with us. I'm also grateful for the theme this year. I don't know how Drew does it. He has a knack for coming up with unique themes for summer series. And I always think, well, when I get his theme and the lessons that he's come up with, and then I look at what I came up with, I thought, man, he did such a better job than I did. But this is another wonderful one, talking about dreams of the Bible. And so if you've got your Bibles, open them to Daniel chapter 2. That's where we're going to be tonight. We'll be looking at a number of things in regard to Nebuchadnezzar's dream and the image that he saw in his dream, and we'll learn some lessons from that. I got to thinking about dreams. How many of you dream? All of you raise your hand, because whether you realize it or not, everybody dreams. That's one thing scientists who study these kinds of things tell us. Everybody dreams. Now, a lot of people don't realize they dream. But did you realize that every human being, on average, dreams about 2 hours every night? And most dreams don't last more than 20 minutes. They can be very brief. They may last just for a few minutes. They can be as long as 20 minutes. But most people don't dream any longer than that. But for a total of somewhere around 2 hours every night, we all dream. Now, the reason why a lot of people don't think they dream is because 95% of the dreams that we have are forgotten instantly. As soon as you wake up, as soon as they're over, they just go away. They came out of the subconscious, they go back into the subconscious, and they're just gone. And so a lot of times we don't even realize that we have dreamed when in fact we have. I found some interesting facts about dreams. Most of our dreams center around negative emotions. Most of us don't have happy dreams. The most common emotion that is expressed in dreams is anxiety. And so it's something that we're anxious about. We've finally relaxed to a point that we can just kind of let some things go, and unfortunately it's the more negative things that happen to us during our day and during our lifetime that sort of rise to the forefront of our mind when that relaxed period takes place in the middle of the night as we are sleeping. Did you realize that you're generally paralyzed during your dreams? There's a concept of paralysis that takes place during your dreams. Now, I read this and I got to thinking, and I'm going to tell you some things about myself. My wife has told me, and I've even realized it, I've kind of woken myself up a few times where I would be yelling in a dream. I realize in the dream I'm yelling at somebody, I'm yelling about something, and I'm actually yelling vocally in the middle of the night, and I either wake myself up or my wife wakes me up and tells me to shut up and roll over and, that kind of thing, which I don't blame her. I would probably do the same thing. And I remember as a child hearing my dad do the very same thing. But here's the strange thing. When I do that, I can't verbalize anything. It's a muffled yell. Now, I may be verbalizing something in my dream, but it doesn't come out of my mouth. That's that paralysis that takes place. Strange, but it happens. It's a real thing. Most of us dream in color. However, sometimes we dream in black and white. Isn't that an odd thing? And here's another thing that's strange about that. Most people, when they dream in color, they dream in pastels, not vivid colors as we see around us, but we dream more in muted or pastel colors. And that's particularly hard for a guy like me because I'm partially colorblind, and pastels are the ones that really give me trouble. But somehow in my dreams I'm able to see those colors, and it's a reality. Here's another odd thing. Blind people dream, and they dream visually. They see things in their dreams. Now, scientists some scientists may understand that. I don't understand that, but it is a reality. It is something that has been studied, something that they have come to discover. And in your dreams, you only see faces that you're already familiar with. You ever dreamed a dream and somebody, you wake up and you realize, oh, I dreamed about so-and-so. That face is familiar to you. And so that person has come to the forefront of your subconscious as you're dreaming. And so everybody you see in your dream, you've seen that face somewhere before. Now, again, it may not necessarily be somebody you know well, but it is a face that has registered in your mind, in your subconscious. So everybody in the dream, you've seen somewhere before. And so those are just some interesting facts, some interesting concepts about dreams. Now, another thing about dreams, and I don't understand everything I want to know about this, but there's also something about dreams where many dreams are, or a small percentage, I shouldn't have said many, a small percentage of dreams are precognitive. And what they mean by precognitive is they almost seem to tell the future. You're dreaming about something that hasn't yet happened. And I came across one site, and I didn't make a list of them, but there have actually been several inventions that have come about because somebody dreamed it, and then they woke up and they built whatever it was that they dreamed about. And so that's sort of falls under the category of precognitive. Also, the concept of déjà vu falls into that category as well. So in some ways, we may dream about some things, anticipate some things, foreshadow some things that may happen a day or so or a week or so after we have had a dream. There's no explanation for it. We don't know how it happens. We don't know why it happens, but it is a reality. Now, all that talk about dreams, that brings us to Daniel chapter 2. You've been talking about dreams already. You've already been in the book of Daniel. And one thing I want to do tonight is encourage you to read and study the book of Daniel. About a year or so ago, I studied the book of Daniel with a men's class that I say I teach it, I really facilitate it. Everybody in that class is about 20 years older than me, so I'm not really qualified to teach the class, I don't feel like. But I love the group of men, and I love the class, and I love being involved in it. But we studied the book of Daniel, and it really reignited a love for the book of Daniel to me. You know, most of the time in our churches, particularly with our children, we only study the first 6 chapters of the book of Daniel. Once we get to chapter 7, we check out. We're gone. From chapter 7 through the end of the book, it's more like the book of Revelation, and it's weird, it's strange, and we don't understand it, and we don't want to study it. Let me encourage you to study the entirety of the book of Daniel. It is an utterly fascinating book, and it is far more than Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It is far more than Daniel in the lion's den. It is far more even than this image that we will discuss tonight. It is one of the most interesting books of the entire Old Testament. and it is well worth your attention. So that's my plug for the book of Daniel, and I want to encourage you to take a deep look at it at every opportunity that you may have. Now, the book of Daniel takes place during the Babylonian captivity. After the reign of Saul and David and Solomon, where the kingdom was united under these three great kings, then the kingdom became divided because of some foolishness on the part of Solomon's son, as well as a very dynamic and cunning man by the name of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. And a number of times in our Bibles we find that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, caused Israel to sin, and he led the people away from God. And as a result, we then have a divided kingdom. And the 10 northern tribes went to follow Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and then the 2 southern tribes, known mainly as Judah, went to follow Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, and then many other kings that followed each of those after that. Now, Israel ultimately went off into oblivion. They followed Jeroboam, son of Nebat. They never got their ship straight. They never straightened themselves out with God. And as a result, they were punished, and they were carried off by a foreign people. They were assimilated into that foreign nation, and so they were never heard from as a nation again. Judah, on the other hand, was the tribe that was prophesied long ago through which the Messiah would come into the world. So God had a stake in preserving at least a portion of them. And that's what the Babylonian captivity was all about. It was about trying to preserve this remnant. We read that word a number of times, particularly in the prophets, to preserve this remnant of people through whom the Messiah would come into the world. Well, in order to do that, God had to kind of put his people in jail. We might think of it even as putting them in time out. They weren't behaving, so they needed to go in the corner and sit for a while. Well, the corner they were going to sit in was a corner by the name of Babylon. Now, this wasn't a good corner. It wasn't a nice corner. It wasn't a corner anybody wanted to go to. I understand Hunter is in Disney World this week enjoying a vacation. I'm proud that he's able to do that, and I hope he is enjoying himself. I grew up 90 minutes from Disney World, and I'm still baffled how people enjoy the place. But I've been there enough to know. You know, a lot of places maybe you enjoy, places you like to go to vacation, and you can enjoy that. Babylon was not one of those places. It was not a destination for people who wanted to take a nice vacation, because Babylon was known, particularly the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, was known for his cruelty. He was one of the most cruel rulers to ever live upon the face of the earth. And he was just not a nice guy. Now, one of the interesting things about the book of Daniel, and I can't prove this, I'm not going to stake a claim on this, but the book of Daniel almost seems to indicate that through the influence of Daniel and the interjection of God into the dreams and the visions of Nebuchadnezzar, that Nebuchadnezzar may have, before the end of his life, become a believer in God. That's one of the interesting facets about Daniel. This wicked, wicked man, this terrible individual, but ultimately he came to revere God. And that's one of the interesting things about the book of Daniel. But as the people of Judah were carried away into captivity, among them were 4 young men that we've already identified: Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And interestingly enough, we always call Daniel by his Hebrew name. We always call the other 3 young men by their Babylonian names. We don't even know what their Hebrew names were. Well, we do, because it's in the text, but we'd have a hard time calling it to mind, because we've commonly come to know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their Babylonian names. So these 4 men go into captivity, and it is around these 4, particularly Daniel, that the events of the book surround, and particularly in the early part of the book. Now, chapter 2 picks up at an interesting point. At the beginning of chapter 2, we come upon, as one writer described it, a sleepless sovereign. At the beginning of chapter 2, we're told that Nebuchadnezzar could not sleep. He had a dream, and as a result of the dream, he was sleepless, and he was troubled, and his sleep, the ESV says, deserted him. And so he had one of those dreams that when he woke up from the dream, it bothered him so badly that he couldn't go back to sleep. Has it ever happened to you? I had a friend a number of years ago that had night terrors, not nightmares, night terrors, and they were afraid to go back to sleep after these terrors would take place because they were afraid terrible things were going to happen. And so sometimes you dream something so shocking, so startling, that you at least can't go back to sleep immediately. But Nebuchadnezzar could not sleep at all the rest of the night. He abandoned his sleep. So we come upon this individual. Now, the thing about this dream that he had, it was a startling dream. It was something that shook his consciousness. There was something about it, maybe not nightmarish, but it was at least vivid enough that he knew it was significant. He knew it was something he needed to figure out. And I think that's why we have a lot of, why we see the sleeplessness of Nebuchadnezzar during this fateful night. Now there's an old line from, speaking of Disney, from Cinderella, a dream is a wish your heart makes. But as you've already noticed, I think Brother Andy Kaiser a few weeks ago dealt with chapter 4. And none of the dreams Nebuchadnezzar had were necessarily dreams that his heart would make or wishes that his heart would make. They didn't turn out too well for Nebuchadnezzar, at least in the initial stages. But nonetheless, he could tell this was not a normal dream, and he wanted to know more about it. Now that brings about what the same writer calls the fraudulent fakers, the seers of Babylon. These men that Nebuchadnezzar had depended upon to give him wisdom, to give him guidance, to give him instruction, to sort of look into the future, however they devised they were going to look into the future and say, oh, this is what we believe will happen, or to give their approval of the things that the king was doing. Now, here's something we need to understand, and I sort of stumbled on this a few weeks ago. At Decatur Highway, I'm teaching the book of Job, and that's not always an easy book to teach, but it's another fascinating book to study. But something hit me as I was studying the first couple of chapters of the book of Job, and we find it here, I think, in the book of Daniel as well, and that is the devil doesn't know the future. You ever think about that? Now, the devil claims to know the future. The devil wants to suggest to us that he knows the future. If you do this, then these things will happen. That's exactly what he told Eve, wasn't it? If you eat of this fruit, then all these wonderful things are going to happen to you. And so he claims to know the future, but in reality he doesn't. And the book of Job, I think, is a really good place to impress that, because you remember in the first 2 chapters of the book of Job, he goes to God and he says, if you'll let the hedge down, if you'll let me get close to him, if you'll let me take away his wealth, he'll deny you. Now you'll remember, he took away Job's wealth. Did Job deny him? No. And then he goes back to God and he says, you still got a hedge around him. If you'll let me touch Job, if you'll let me hurt the man, he will deny you. So that's exactly what happens. He's covered in boils. He's miserable. He was diseased in some unbelievable ways. But again, did Job deny him? No. Job questioned, Job wondered, Job wanted to argue with God and figure out what was going on with him, but he never did what Satan said he would do. Satan may be strong, Satan may be powerful, but Satan is not strong enough, smart enough, or powerful enough to determine your future. Only God and you have the ability to do that. These men that Nebuchadnezzar brought in, they may have been able to do a lot of things. They may have been able to influence the king in a lot of ways, but they could not tell him the future. And that was a big part of the problem here in Daniel chapter 2. And I think Nebuchadnezzar even realized that. He didn't want to tell them his dream. He couldn't remember all of it, but he didn't want to tell them what he could remember of it, in case they would sort of put the pieces together and say, oh, well, yeah, that means this over here and this means that over there, and sort of lead him along to thinking some things that may not have actually been true. But they couldn't even tell him his dream, which is significant within its own self. And then finally, when the decree goes out to kill these men, to put them to death, Daniel says, well, no, don't do that. Let me take a stab at it. And he prays to God. And it's interesting to notice, if you look down in verse 19 of the chapter, Daniel prays to God, and it says, the mystery was then revealed to Daniel in a vision at night, and Daniel praised the God of the heavens and declared, may the name of God be praised forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. Nowhere in any of his interactions with Nebuchadnezzar did Daniel ever claim that he was able to do these things on his own. He was always giving credit to God. He was always pointing Nebuchadnezzar in the direction of Almighty God. He didn't want him to think that he was some seer that came along that was just better than the other ones that Nebuchadnezzar had. He wanted him to know that every bit of this was taking place because God had revealed these things. And then that brings us to the declaration of the dream and the disclosure of this dream. When Daniel speaks up before the king, down about verse 37, he says, you saw, O king, behold a great image. This image mighty of exceeding brightness stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. That's why he couldn't sleep anymore. Its appearance was frightening. And the head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, and its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. And so he reveals to him what he had dreamed. He tells him something nobody else could tell him. And now he wants to explain to him what all of these things mean. So that's the big question. What does it mean? What is it about in this image that Nebuchadnezzar needed to understand, and that we ourselves, as we look back at it, needs to understand? Because I believe it even has implications today. And you and I need to understand those implications. So more than Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel, you and I, the understanding of this dream is more than you and I could even dream of ourselves. Because it was a plan that God had in place. It was a plan that was going to work itself out through men. And that is the secret to the image of Nebuchadnezzar. So I want to look at it in a couple of different ways. We're going to divide this study into two different parts, and I don't have a lot of time left, so I'm going to have to rush through the parts. The introduction hopefully was the longest part of the entire lesson. But let's take a look at these parts, and if I touch the right button, there we go. First, I want you to see the collapsible kingdoms of men. I want you to see what happens to these kingdoms that are taking place. Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he sees this great image as Daniel revealed to him. The Aramaic word here means a statue, not an idol. And I was reminded of something not too long ago. I was at a workshop listening to Dr. Justin Rogers from Freed Hardeman. And he was talking about some of the gods and some of the images of the ancient people like Syria and Babylon and so on. And it reminded me a little bit of what we read here, because this was a large, frightening statue. And if you look at some of the art of that region and of that time, there were some really strange things these guys imagined, and they carved out in stone in various ways. This is sort of a replica somebody made of that statue, and I'll come back to that in a moment. The picture you see in front of you are the ruins of a Syrian temple by the name of, if I pronounce it right, Ain Dara. And Ain Dara is a very old site. Archaeologists have studied it and looked at it a number of different ways. But here's what I want you to see about Ain Dara. Their temple was fashioned somewhat similar to the temple that we find in Jerusalem. They had a holy place and they had a holy of holies. Now, I don't know how well you can see it in that picture. You see those two big footprints, okay, in the foreground? Just beyond those two big footprints, and if you could really tell the distance real well, that there is a single footprint. And so this God, and this is, archaeologists believe this was representative of their God walking into the temple. He wasn't kneeling before the temple, he was walking into the temple. And that single footprint is about 30 feet or so on the other side of those two footprints together. Now, those footprints themselves, you can see in relation to a human footprint. They're about 3 feet long. And so it's estimated that they believed this God, and I think they also believed there may have been a statue at this site at some point to represent the God. But they believe this statue or this God may have been in excess of 65 feet tall. Now, in my mind, I can't prove it, but in my mind, I think that's the kind of image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. This huge statue that with a head of gold, with a chest and arms of silver, with a middle and thighs of brass, and then the lower legs and the feet of iron, and then iron mixed with clay. So he sees this huge image in front of him, and he wonders, what in the world could this mean? Now, if you look carefully in Daniel chapter 2, notice verse 37, it says, "You, O king, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given a kingdom." That's in verse 37. Then in verse 39, "Another kingdom inferior to you shall rise after you." And then in verse 40, "And there shall be a fourth kingdom." And then in verse 44, "And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom." What do you think the dream is about? Dream's about kingdoms. It's about world powers. It's about empires. And Daniel identifies it all starts with Nebuchadnezzar. So we start with the head of gold. And the head of gold, Daniel tells him, was all about Babylon. He even extols the great virtues of Nebuchadnezzar, what a mighty and great king he was. He describes him as King of Kings. Now, would know anybody else described that way? Nebuchadnezzar, and in Hebrew parlance, when you read the King of Kings, or for instance, one of the headings for the Song of Solomon is Song of Songs, that kind of language indicates this is the best of the best. This is someone or something that is greater or higher than anything else in its category. So we read of the King of Kings, we read of the Song of Songs. This is the very best of the best. And that's what he indicates to Nebuchadnezzar. You, currently, in human history, are the best that's ever lived. And maybe the best that will ever live, so far as human kings is concerned. And so he extols the virtues of Nebuchadnezzar and of his kingdom. And it's interesting, this is the only one that we don't have to guess about. It's the only one in Daniel chapter 2 that's identified. Later in chapter 7, Daniel would have a vision himself of 4 beasts. And he gives a little bit more detail about those other 3 kingdoms in Daniel chapter 7. But here in Daniel chapter 2, he focuses primarily upon Nebuchadnezzar and the empire of Babylon. In Isaiah chapter 14, Isaiah refers to Babylon as the golden city. So a borrowed reference perhaps, or at least one that was common in that particular day, Daniel and Isaiah being partly simultaneous in their lives. Of the Bible's 425 references to gold, it always refers to something of great value or something of superiority. So again, Daniel is alerting Nebuchadnezzar of how much respect he should have and how much respect he indeed did have. And so being the head of gold meant that Nebuchadnezzar indeed ruled a great and a majestic kingdom. Now, one of the great contributions that we have of the Babylonian empire and the captivity under Babylon was that's where all the synagogues came from. Since the people couldn't go back to Jerusalem, they were allowed to build synagogues where they could gather and they could read and they could worship to some degree. And they took that back with them when they began to go back to Judea and then spread across the world. So when we read in the New Testament about all the synagogues, it started in Babylon. So that's something that comes out of that period. And then the chest and arms made of silver. This refers, we believe, to the Medo-Persian Empire. Now, I'll tell you right off the top that not everybody agrees necessarily with this outline. There are some people that have identified these different empires with different people. Some would split the Medo-Persian Empire, first the Medes and then the Persians, and then the Greeks would be the last one. But most conservative scholars, I think, go along with this declension and this understanding of these different empires. Now, the Medo-Persian Empire, they were big on law and order. You'll read here in the book of Daniel, you'll also see it in the book of Esther, about the law of the Medes and the Persians. And once a law was put in place and the king kind of put his insignia on it, according to the Medes and Persians, it couldn't change. It was what it was. And so they were big on that, and that was something that they contributed to the world as that empire came into effect. The belly and the thighs then were of bronze, and this, we believe, is indicative of the Greek Empire, mainly under the rule of Alexander the Great. And if you're a student of history, then you understand that next kingdom indeed would be the Greek Empire, or we believe would be the Greek Empire. And Greek soldiers even were known to wear coats or armor made of brass. And so it makes sense that, or bronze rather, and so it makes sense that it would be identified with that. Now, the Greeks obviously infused the world with their language, with their culture, with their wisdom. And so a lot of the things that influence Jesus' day and time came from the Greeks. And then finally, we have the legs and the feet of iron and clay, and this, we believe, is representative of the Roman Empire. Iron, because the Roman Empire was particularly, at least militarily, early on, very, very strong. They were also very brutal. Now, Nebuchadnezzar was a nasty man, but the Romans, they just tried to outdo everybody they could come upon. But they may not have been as nasty as Nebuchadnezzar, but they did their very best. And so they were a very strong and powerful group, and they exerted their power through military. As a matter of fact, most of Rome's influence in the world was through their military power. Now, we know Rome also for the Senate and sort of a republic form of government that they tried to instill. But the truth of the matter is, most of that was undergirded or was overruled sometimes by the military itself. And so the Roman Empire, with its inherent weaknesses and that iron mixed with clay in the feet, I think that indicates that over time it began to degrade. Began to kind of fall. And there were a lot of reasons for that. Immorality and lack of integrity. There was division among a number of their leaders and their rulers and among military generals and so forth. And so over time, it just started to cave in on itself. And iron and clay doesn't mix very well. And it also makes that mixture very, very weak. And that ultimately is what happened with the Romans. Now, their contribution to society was through their roads and also the fact that they had many provinces that were custom-free. And so there was a lot of free trade, there was a lot of free travel, and when the gospel began to be preached, that was a boon for the gospel because they could go anywhere, and they had a common language from the Greeks, and they could preach the gospel almost anywhere in the Roman Empire without too much trouble, except when the persecutions came about and opposition was leveled against them by those that were around them. But this isn't where the dream of Nebuchadnezzar necessarily ends. He's given a vision of this great statue, and Daniel tells him about these empires that will follow him. But then we come to verse 44, and as was read for us a few moments ago, and in Daniel's interpretation of what this dream meant, Daniel tells us something very important. He says, in the days of those kings, the God of the heavens will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Now, in his recounting of all of this, he describes a stone that was cut out of a mountain, not a stone that was cut with man's hands, but it was cut out of a mountain. That stone then comes along and it breaks this statue in pieces, and it then grows into a mountain itself. That's odd, to think about in a dream. A stone, and then it just grows. I haven't seen too many stones grow. I've said for a long time, I've got a black thumb. My wife likes for me to plant things. I think she just likes for me to kill things. But I'll plant them and then, they die eventually. But so far this year, I'm doing pretty good. Give me another month or so. So there's something interesting, though, about this stone. And so that brings us to the conquering kingdom of God. That's ultimately what this is all about. That's the point of this entire exercise. Yes, Nebuchadnezzar was a great king, and there were great empires that were going to follow him. These empires would contribute something to the history of the world that ultimately would allow for God to do great things through a singular kingdom. And that is what God wanted Nebuchadnezzar to know. He wasn't going to rule forever. He wasn't going to be, his kingdom wasn't going to last forever. But there was a kingdom coming that he needed to be aware of. Now, as we look at that kingdom and we see that stone coming in and making its force known, some people may question the identity of some of these empires. As I said, different people put different interpretations on them. But I don't think there's anybody, or at least I've not come across anybody, that does not understand the identity of the stone. I came across a quote, I think it was Michael Whitworth in his book, Derision of Heaven, that quoted from this, or may have been another source. But I came across a quote from Augustine, and Augustine said, "Is not this rock Christ, which was cut without hands out of the mountain, from the kingdom of the Jews without a husband's activity? Did not that stone break all the kingdoms of the world, that is, all the despotisms of idols and demons? Did not that stone grow and become a great mountain and fill the whole earth?" And it's interesting to notice that in the Psalms, God is constantly referred to as a rock. The Jews always referred to God as a rock. And so later, it's not a real jump in logic to understand that the one who is God with us, the one who was God in the flesh, as John would describe him in John chapter 1, it's not a great leap to understand that Jesus would be that stone, that rock. Even later, when Jesus questioned his disciples, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And who do you say that I am?" And you remember Peter's confession, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I say to you, you are Peter, a small stone, a pebble, and upon this," what? "Rock, I will build my church." What rock? The confession. The fact that Jesus is the Christ. The fact that God came into the world to form a foundation for his people. And so when we come upon this stone and we come upon this rock that was cut out of a mountain that dashes this statue to pieces, it is not a stretch to understand that this is a prophecy of Jesus Christ. Even Isaiah himself in Isaiah chapter 28 says, "Behold, I am the one who has laid as a foundation in Zion a stone, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone of a sure foundation. Whoever believes will not be in haste." And it's not insignificant that this one single prophecy, first originated in Psalm 118, repeated by Isaiah in Isaiah 28, is the most often repeated prophecy concerning Jesus Christ in the New Testament. That he is a stone that is laid in place by God. And so as we look at the stone, we see Jesus, and when we see Jesus, we can't help but see that which is inseparably attached to Jesus. And that's his church, his kingdom, his people that would begin and that would continue forever. And in that stone, we see a number of things. We see, for instance, that it is a solid stone. It's a foundation stone. It's something you can build something upon. Jesus said, "Upon this rock, I will build my church." In Daniel 2, Daniel says that the God of heaven will set up. He's going to build something based upon this stone, this rock, that has dashed this statue to pieces. And so, when Paul would write to the Ephesians, he would tell them that they could be part of the household of God. The household of God which was built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, which is Jesus Christ, the cornerstone. The one that would pull it all together. The one that would be the very foundation. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, he says, there is no other foundation that any man can lay. It's a solid stone. Not only do we see that it's a solid stone, but we see that it is a secure stone. Once the foundation of Jesus is laid, there is nothing that can destroy it. There's nothing that can take it away. In Hebrews 13 and verse 8, we're assured that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't change. He doesn't go away. He doesn't disappear. We're assured in Romans chapter 8 that for those that are in Jesus Christ, there is no condemnation, verse 1. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will it be death? Will it be the circumstances of life? Will it be angels? No one can separate us from the love of Christ. And so we have security found in the stone that God has delivered. It's a superior stone. It's a superior stone because He has a name that is above every other name. He is above all others. Nebuchadnezzar may have been described as the King of Kings in his day, but there is a King of Kings that is above all kings, and that includes Nebuchadnezzar, and that's Jesus Christ. He's the stone, and He's superior to all else. And not only is He a superior stone, but we also see that He is a sustained stone. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He has given to us, Hebrews chapter 12 says, an eternal kingdom. Peter echoes that very same language. A kingdom that cannot be shaken, a kingdom that cannot be destroyed, a kingdom that is not going to go away. Because He is the stone. He is the one that will make sure it is always there. And we can depend upon Him. What a wonderful vision. What a wonderful picture that is given. And from Nebuchadnezzar's dream, we realize that all of history is building to a point where Jesus Christ, the stone laid by God at the feet of this statue to destroy it and to pervade every other nation, that stone points us to the coming of Jesus, to the building of His church, which was the ultimate purpose of God, that He intended from ages past, and that is here in reality today, and that you and I can be a part of, and that we can enjoy. More than the stone, Jesus is the mystery, one writer said, that God patiently waited so long to reveal. And He is the hope of glory. Colossians 1 and verse 27. And that's something no tyrant can take away. It's something no empire can destroy. It is something that no one can steal from us, because Jesus is the security of His people. If you're here tonight and you're not a child of God, don't you want to be a part of something that'll never go away? Not too long ago, a few days ago, our secretary at Decatur Highway was going through some old books that we had in one room there. And she found a 1949 copy of the Encyclopedia Britannica, a whole set. Now, isn't that fascinating? Now, a lot of the information in that set of encyclopedias has changed. Most of the nations that are mentioned in that Encyclopedia Britannica don't exist anymore. You look at a globe now as compared to a globe 20, 25, 30 years ago. The countries have changed. The borders have changed. Nations come and go, don't they? I read an article the other day. There are 25 corporations, major corporations, that they believe will go out of business this year. Economists tell us they'll go out of business. They'll not be here anymore. 25. Many of us can think of businesses we grew up with, common names that most people can't even recall to memory anymore. A lot of things come, a lot of things go. Things disappear from history. One thing that will never go away, one thing that will never disappear, one thing we can always depend upon is Jesus Christ. His church, His kingdom, because God has placed it there for each and every one of us. And if you're not a part of that kingdom, if you're not a part of that church, you need to be. Because we all want to be part of something that'll never go away. And ultimately, He will deliver that kingdom to His Father to be preserved and to be cared for all of eternity. To enjoy fellowship and harmony and praise and worship at the feet of God. In the best place any of us can imagine, and it's so good, we really can't imagine it. It's spectacular. And it's the home of God. That's the final resting place of His kingdom. But that's and it'll go well beyond what any of us can imagine. And so tonight, I want to offer you that opportunity to become a part of something that lasts and that'll never go away. To trust the stone that will make sure that it never goes away and that can be the foundation of your life. And if you'll trust in Jesus tonight, turn to Him by way of repentance, confess His name before this audience, and submit yourself to be immersed into Him, He Himself will add you to His kingdom, to His people, and He will secure you so long as you remain faithful to Him. And if you're here tonight and you've already been baptized, but you've not been faithful, you've wandered away, you've allowed things to come in between you and your Savior, and you turned your back on Him, why not come back to Him? Why not stand on that sure footing of Jesus Christ to know where you will be for all of eternity? The invitation is open tonight. And if you need to obey it by being immersed into Him or by confessing sin that is keeping you from Him, won't you come while together we stand and sing?